I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. New year, new name. Same podcast, it's Sober Friends. So here's why we changed the name, everybody. Nothing's changing on the podcast. A little birdie told me that, you know what? Great podcasts have the ability to be found. And if people are looking for a sober podcast, they're going to type in sober. And the term "you are not alone" might be difficult. We have a great message here. We want to spread it to as many people as possible. We're going to continue doing that. The new name, Sober Friends, you can find the website at soberfriendspod.com. Same old website. The old one will probably work for a while, but we wanted to explain a little bit of the change, which really isn't much of a change. John and Steve, how are you tonight?
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Mac. Good to be here again.
Awesome. We're talking physical fitness again. We're adding on to last week's conversation because people want to get physically fit in the new year. And we have a big guest. Our guest this week is Lindsay Persico. She's a fitness coach, an outdoors woman, a mom of 3. You may have seen her compete on the History Channel's show Alone, the Beast. She was able to complete the challenge with no tools. She lasted an entire 30 days. Her competitors, not so much. Lindsay's here to put us to shame, kick our ass, and to continue the discussion from last week about physical fitness, mental fitness, spiritual fitness. Lindsay, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. This is in John's wheelhouse because John loves the hunting, the shooting, the outdoors type of stuff. I'm a novice to this. I have started a brand new routine on my spin bike. And the reason I took a week off, you'd probably be able to relate to this because you got a family and you don't do very much. My ass hurts from the bike. I had to stop yesterday after 30 minutes because my ass hurt. So I got off. And now you're going to put us to shame because you have 3 kids. You're out in the woods. You're hunting. You're preparing for the family. You're doing meal plans. You're training people. You're training yourself. My goodness, if you can do this, we can do something.
Well, I it's not always perfect and it's not always pretty, but as long as you keep showing up, that's what matters.
Yeah, give us the elevator speech. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, you kind of got a good start going there. So family, I have 3 kiddos and my husband. We live in Montana. It is wintry here right now. One of my favorite things to do in the winter is predator hunt, and I've been so busy lately I have yet to get out doing it, so I feel you there with them.
What does that mean? I heard you on another podcast talking about that, and I couldn't get my head around that. I feel like a city boy.
That's that you are?
I am a city boy. Is that as simple as what it sounds? You're out hunting predators?
Yeah, pretty simple. I mean, we go out usually using some sort of a call because predators are always looking for food. That's kind of the one thing that's on their mind. And just trying to imitate something they want to eat so they will show themselves. And then you can take them out of the herd or the pack or whatever they're in. We love to hunt elk here, and we have a really robust population of wolves, and they do predate on our elk herds pretty substantially. So we try to keep those numbers down, but it's something, they're a hard animal to hunt, and I've been learning how to hunt them. So haven't taken one yet, but I like to go out and spend time in the woods in the winter and try to locate a pack and see if I can get it on them. Every year I learn something new, but it's also just kind of an excuse to get out there. You gotta have some reason to go out there and chase after stuff in the middle of nowhere.
So alcoholics like us who might be in recovery or might be active can think of a million excuses of why we're too busy to do this. How do you do this with a full-time job where you're training other people to be better physically fit, feed the kids, do the blog, and then run out into the woods and hunt things? How do you do this?
It's not always pretty. It's kind of a mess sometimes, but you have your priorities, and setting up your life in an organized way to where you're setting aside time, that makes opportunities for these types of things to happen. Is life always going to fall in line with what you planned? No. And when that happens, you just roll with the punches and you check off those number one priorities, which for me are family and my work. So sometimes those things come first, and that means I don't get out and predator hunt as much as I want. But when things line up as I've planned, then I get to get out there, and I really cherish those times. They're special.
Yeah, hey Lindsay, it's Steve here. Yeah, it's nice meeting you. I've heard a lot about you. I do a lot of hiking with John, and so we're out in the woods a lot together. And I get it, right? We do the same thing. We do a lot of plans. We make a lot of plans, do a lot of hikes that never happen, right?
Right.
I mean, and we train for them and everything. We had a big one blow up on us this year because of the same thing. Life gets in the way, right? Different life things for us, but still. But I am amazed about how you keep all this in perspective, right? And how you continue to focus on your own health. How old are your kids, may I ask? Like what age range?
I have a 14, a 13, and a 7.
Okay. Yeah. So you got a whole range there. But yeah, and I love doing it. I love being out. I have a cousin who just sold their home and got an RV, and they're down in Florida, and they're posting pictures about being on the beach. And I just posted back, snow covered, and my backpack on. Like, no, I'll keep my snow up here in Connecticut because I love that kind of stuff. I just love it, and it gives me a reason to try to stay healthy. Right? I'm a goal person, and if you say, hey, you want to hike this mountain, I can have a goal to do that. And if you don't give me that goal, I find it a lot harder to be motivated to do the things I need to do. So it's really important for me to keep hiking, keep moving, keep that healthy part, because, I'm in recovery for alcohol addiction, but I realize that there's so much more to my life than that, right? And there's so much more to my health than that. So it's so important for me to do those things. And even when my ass hurts or my legs hurt from workout, right? We get back on it and we do it again. So really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there always has to be some sort of a driving force, right? You can't rely on motivation because it's fleeting and it's only there when it's easy. But when it's hard and motivation's gone, what gets you up in the morning and what pushes you out the door? There has to be something bigger than the harder parts and the frustrating parts of life that continues to drive you. So finding what that is for you specifically is really important. For me, a lot of times it's just my fear of missing out because there's so many things I want to do that are difficult to do. One of them is elk hunting in the fall. It's very physically challenging, and if I don't stay active through the winter and the summer and I'm on it, then I'm going to suffer and I'm not going to be able to enjoy that time in the woods like I would otherwise. So for me, it's really motivating to stay in shape and to keep myself in a position to go.
Yeah, one of the main things that excuse me, people in recovery, they particularly when they first get sober and they first get clean, their impression is, you mean I put down the drugs, I put down the bottle, and I got to spend the rest of my life in church basements, going to these meetings. And it's not all about that. We get sober, we get clean, so we can learn to go back into the world and to enjoy the world and have fun, to be around people and to experience new things. God made this beautiful playground we call Earth out there for us to enjoy. And it's such, for me, it's such a beautiful place. There's peace out there. I feel I feel a connection out there. And any opportunity I get, I go out into the woods. Like Steve said, we do a lot of hiking. We need to stay physically fit in order to do that. A couple of years back, I went on a moose hunt. So I was severely overweight, and I tried to get fit on my own. I lost 40 pounds, and I was skinny fat. I went on the trip. I was able to keep up. I was able to have a good time. We put on 10 miles a day through bogs and tundra up in Newfoundland. And it was a blast. But I came back and I kind of sat on my ass. And a month later, another friend of ours, Dave, we went out for a hike and my knees killed me. I couldn't believe in 30 days I had lost everything. So I always have a dream, and I haven't done it yet. And I still on my list is to go to Wyoming on an elk hunt. It's something I want to do. And it started me on my physical fitness journey back in 2019. And I was going to a gym and doing some things, and I wasn't getting the gains that I was looking for. And I didn't really understand the nutrition portion of it. And that's where Lindsay came into my life, because I was a client of Lindsay. We worked together for 6 months, and I learned a tremendous amount about that balance between what nutrition is all about, how it ties into physical fitness. And it's not all about pumping iron. It's not all about getting on the treadmill and running 5-6 miles a day and exercising like a fiend. We as people with addiction, we're all or nothing. And it's like, well, I want to get healthy. I want to lose some weight, and we're going to get on that treadmill or we're going to get on that bike and we're going to go for an hour and a half.
I want it now.
I want it now. Yeah, my saying too. I want it now, today.
And we work our asses off and we get nowhere. And what I learned is it's not all about that. There's a balance between strength training and cardio, but that nutritional portion of it is so huge. It's almost 90% nutrition and 10% lifting the weights. That's what I learned from our time together. That's what my goal was, is to learn all that stuff. So that, if you could expand on that whole principle behind nutrition and exercise for our listeners, because a lot of people that listen to this, they're either thinking about going to a gym or they're just starting to get out to a gym. How do we go about doing this to make it worthwhile? So one, we get the gains that we're looking for, and two, we don't get burned out real very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think it's super easy to almost turn exercise into an addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can replace one addiction with another.
Absolutely.
And obviously the reason we avoid all of that kind of stuff is because of our health. We're trying to be as healthy as possible. And exercise can move out of a space of being healthy and into a space of being unhealthy. And no matter what we're doing when it comes to nutrition or fitness, we really need to look at it through a lens of, how is this going to benefit my body, or is this really benefiting my body? And sometimes if you don't have a good understanding of nutrition, it's hard to know. But one important thing to remember with fitness is recovery matters. And the ability that you have to recover is going to be, one, dependent upon how much rest you give yourself, but two, dependent upon the way that you fuel your body. So if you're not giving your body enough fuel to work with, for one thing, you're going to waste your time in the gym, because your body needs building blocks to build muscle and to make gains and to make progress with your physical fitness. It needs the fuel that it gets from your food to do that. So if you don't have enough, you're going to waste your time. When it comes to post-workout, your nutrition and the fuel that your body has to work with for recovery is equally as important. After the workout, your body is going through a process to rebuild. And if you go back in and you break muscles down and you continue to do that without allowing the proper amount of time for your body to rebuild, not paying attention to how you're feeling and your energy levels, and just running yourself into the ground, you're also not going to make those gains and see that progress that you want. So there is a healthy balance there. The proper amount of fuel, the right amount of different macros, whether it be protein and carbohydrates and fats, they're all important. And then adequate recovery and listening to your body. It all makes a big difference in how well your body's able to adapt.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that those of us in recovery, I think you nailed one of it, is listening to our bodies, right? Listening to ourselves. If we listened to our bodies, we wouldn't have had that problem, whether it be alcohol or drugs, and there's other things to it. But that is one of the hardest things. And I think that's where I know for myself, right? I mean, I have a personal trainer that I use at the gym, and I do that. One of the reasons I do that is because I'm a runner. I like to run. And I always say I could step out my door and go for a 5-mile run and not even think about it. But if I'm going to go down to my basement, which is set up, and do a 30-minute weight workout, it is extremely, extremely painful for me in my brain, not in my body, in my brain, to get myself to do that. So every day, every time I go to the gym and I meet the trainer, my trainer, his name is Kurt, says, "How you doing, Steve?" And I just say, "Hey, Kurt, I showed up today." Right? That's what I got for you. Some days I'm motivated, some days not, but I show up for it, right? And I let him keep me from hurting myself, which is a big thing, right? Because I've worked out on my own. I'm almost 64 years old, and I've always hurt myself because I don't know how to do it properly. So pay somebody to make sure I'm in the right shape. And it is listening to our bodies, and I listen to it a lot better today, right? I mean, I'll go out and I'll run, and if I don't feel like running, if my body's hurting, I won't do it today. Or I have a nice treadmill that gives me cushion downstairs, and I could always do that, So, but yeah, we don't listen to our bodies well, and it's one of the things that, the other thing we talk about in recovery is getting help outside of our addictions when we need help, be it medical or physical or whatever it might be. And I think this is the perfect way to do that, is to get someone like yourself or a personal trainer at a gym, have them sort of walk you through the steps of getting healthy.
Yeah, it's really hard to see things for ourselves sometimes because we're coming at it with a limited perspective. It's just ours. So having that somebody on the outside looking in that's unbiased and not in the complicated mind that we're operating with can be a huge asset, just to set aside what we're actually dealing with and help us focus in on what we need to focus on.
Yeah, very much so.
So let's talk about that dreaded macro, carbohydrate.
Yeah.
Let's explore the myth about carbs.
Yeah. Okay. So, everybody's heard of keto and carnivore and those types of diets where we're minimizing our carb intake. And
I've done them all, and I have lost a ton of weight, and I've never kept it off.
I've done them too. I mean, if we're going to be honest, anybody that's seeking like overall health or trying to maximize it, we fall for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And fall for it because it promises fast results, which it does give you. Mm-hmm. But anybody that you talk to will tell you if they don't do it, they gain all the weight back that they lost, right? And sometimes they experience difficulty afterwards losing weight again. So it continues to get harder and harder. And there's a reason for that. Carbohydrates are our body's preferred fuel source. It wants to use carbohydrates as fuel, and it needs it. So even if we are doing keto, if we're going to be honest, the majority of people who do keto probably don't do it strictly enough to actually be in ketosis the majority of the time. So if you're not actually on that diet strict enough to be in ketosis the majority of the time, where's all that fat going, you think?
Yeah.
Straight into our arteries. If our body is not burning fat as fuel, but we're eating massive amounts of it, we're not getting the benefits of being in ketosis, which means our body's burning that fat as fuel. So it's going to be stored in places we don't want it. And our metabolism is going to respond to what we're fueling it. And it prefers carbohydrates. If it's not getting enough of what it needs, it's not just going to let us die. It's going to slow down, and it's going to only do what it has to do for pure survival, which means that some of the systems that we have operating aren't going to be operating optimally. Things are being slowed down. Our metabolism slows down. How much fuel we're actually able to burn through in a day and use is reduced. Our hormones generally suffer for that because, the metabolism and our hormones, it's all linked. Everything is connected. So there's a negative cascading effect from hormones being dysregulated, and it shows up in our body's ability to burn fuel. So a lot of times when we have clients come to us who have done keto or have done some sort of carb elimination or even just really low calorie diets, which a lot of people have because that's what we're told to do, they come to us eating very, very small amounts of food and still struggling with weight gain. And we always bump people's food back up to where it should be, where our body should be able to burn a certain amount of food based off of our age, our activity level, all the factors that we take into account. Your body, we can calculate how much your body should be able to burn. And it may not be burning at that rate because of not having enough food and all of the different processes that have been slowed down. But if you return to that proper amount of food long enough, then your metabolism will come back up. Your hormones will be well supported. You're going to feel better, and your body will actually be able to burn that much fuel. And that's when you can really start to see results in the gym, because your body's going to have everything it needs to actually build some muscle and make some gains and do all the things that we want it to do. So fueling is really important, and carbohydrates are an essential piece of that.
So if we talk about carbs being bad, are carbs bad, or is it like certain types of carbs? Where does that myth come from?
Honestly, no carbs are bad. I mean, the function of carbohydrates is really simple. It's energy. And our body needs energy to do everything we want it to do. But when it comes to your overall diet, having carbohydrates that are mostly coming from whole foods is going to give you a lot of other benefits too. So if you eat, say you get all of your carbohydrates from candy, the carbohydrate is still doing what it's supposed to be doing, and your body's going to be able to use it just fine. But you're going to be really low in some micronutrients that you need, vitamins and minerals and fiber, because a lot of the time we get our fiber from whole food sources of carbohydrates. So that's why some carbohydrates are labeled bad versus good. It's really not the carbohydrate itself. It's just what you're going to be lacking in your diet if you're getting all of your carbohydrate source from candy, say, gummies, whatever. But those kind of fuel sources work really good if you're in an environment where you need a lot of fuel right away. Like if you're cycling and you're in a competition, those pure, fast carbohydrate sources are exactly what your body needs. And there's a time and a place for those, and there's a balance in it all. So anytime we label a food or a food group as something bad and we try to eliminate it from our diet completely, it kind of sets us up for a bad relationship with food, an unhealthy relationship with food. And when it comes right down to it, nothing is necessarily bad. It's all about how we balance it and what's going to be the very best for us nutritionally overall.
And that's where the macros come in, the carbohydrates, the fat, and the protein. I don't know if it was you or if it was or Tana. But the way of looking at the three macros is, like you said, the energy, the fuel comes from the carbohydrates. The protein is a building block, and the fats is what makes the whole thing work. It's that catalyst that helps the cells get into the production, and all three are very important in order for the body to work. When we first started working together, I hadn't gotten into whole foods as of yet. And I was a little bit taken surprise when I went to Whole Foods, not Whole Foods, the store. I'm talking about Whole Foods. Like if there's no label on it, then that's what we're doing. So, pure vegetables. I do a lot of frozen, lots of fresh. At that time, it was early summer. So lots of fresh vegetables and fruit. Lean meats, some good grains, stuff with, like you said, lots of fiber in it. And I was eating so much food, and and I can remember I was having trouble hitting my macros, and my plates were staggering because all this whole good food, I was getting all the nutrition from it, all the vitamins, all the minerals, everything that I needed, and all the fuel. And it was unbelievable how much I had to eat. And that's when I got into those little, I think Tana told me to get those go-go squeeze, because you can get a bunch of carbs and some fiber in it, lickety split. And, I live off of those things now.
Yeah. I use them all the time.
Yeah.
Or take them to the gym. Yeah.
I've done some of those, like you said, those of us who have wanted to get healthy or struggled with our weight, which I have my whole life. I've done a lot of those different type of diets and different plans, and I have felt great, right? I mean, I've done a sort of a keto style. It was never really a keto thing, but mostly fats and stuff. And I felt great, Joe. We climbed Mount Washington a couple of years ago, and I did it on all fats and nuts and stuff like that. I didn't have any other carbs because I was really focused on it and doing a good job with it.
I thought I was going to have to carry him off the mountain.
No, I was fine. It was really good.
You did good.
No, it was fine, but you're right, and I do find that those diets in the real world are just tough. Yeah, and the other thing I will say is when you start eating those whole foods, those things you can I say things you either raise or grow, right? Those are the whole foods. So you either raise them or you grow them. Yeah, it's amazing how much food you can eat, right? I look at my plate sometime, and my plates are overflowing with food because they're the right foods, right? They're fruits and vegetables and things like that, and so it is amazing how much better. We were talking about it before you came on how the holidays are here, and we're probably I heard somebody on a podcast today say they were 18% cookie. Like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, right? Through the holidays, everybody's picking away at some of these things. So
it's a good time to go to the gym, though, with all those carbohydrates running around your system.
That's right. Well, my trainer got COVID just before we left, so I haven't seen him in about 10 days. So I go back tomorrow, matter of fact, and see him for the first time. So
go in for a nice ass whooping.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good Lord. So think about us and the fact that it's all or nothing. How do you motivate somebody you want to push it, but you don't want to go all the way so that you pin the needle? How do you push somebody to balance it out, but still do it in a sustainable way?
Yeah, that is hard. That's a struggle. I think if you can find a way to channel that all or nothing into something that's really going to benefit you, like your planning or, your preparation, putting that kind of energy into something like that can set you up for success. It can lead to burnout. But if you're aware of that and you're kind of prepared for it and you have a backup plan, you can be okay. Planning ahead is really great. If you can sit down and kind of think about how you want your meals to be for the day or even the week ahead, that can take quite a bit of effort and planning and putting a lot of time into it, but it really pays off in the long run. And building in those kind of habits is something we worked with John a lot, talked to John a lot about, was building a foundation of healthy habits that if you go off the rails or something happens or you get burned out, it's okay. You take a week or you take however long you have to and you kind of reset, and then you have this foundation of habits to go back to. It's something that you've established, it works for you, it makes sense, it's not hard for you because you've built it into being something that's habitual. That takes that kind of dedication to do. So channeling that energy into that would be a lot more productive, I think, in the long run.
All right. And you're absolutely right. The time we spent together when we finished up, I was in the middle of a renovation with a house. I was starting a brand new job. My whole life got derailed. And here it is 3 months later. I'm now just starting to get back to a regular routine. This will be my first week that I've been able to work out every day. That hasn't, I haven't gotten totally away from it. But getting back into that, that peak where I was this summertime where, I was, balancing out my strength training with the cardio, and Steve and I were doing some pretty massive hikes this summer. I mean, that last hike that we went up on the Appalachian Trail, we did 15 miles over 4,000 feet of elevation gain. We averaged over 3 miles an hour for a couple of 63-year-old guys. We were killing it. And it's all because of all the work that we had did. But to your point, I got out of it because life got in the way, but I know how to balance. I learned how to do that. I know how to do it. I know what's expected. I know how much to do when recovery is necessary. You get back to that proper eating. And let's face it, over the holidays, it's almost impossible to do that. I'm not waiting I went back on my program fully on Monday. I'm not waiting till New Year's. Why? It's just for me, it's just another day. But to get back into that thing, to get back into routine, watching my macros, getting back into those whole foods, and it comes right back right away. Another thing that, for people in recovery, we're all or nothing. And if we go on a, and I don't want to I hate that word diet. If we go on a meal plan where we're going to be setting our macros to our activity level, and we have a certain amount of calories that we can burn a day, we're going to hit those proteins, those fats, those carbohydrates. You still need to treat yourself. It doesn't mean that you live in this little itty box, and we're great at that. We are masters at living inside this little control space with the four walls, the ceiling, and the floor made out of 6 foot.
I'm bad at that. I
Yeah,
can never eat
concrete.
ice cream again. I can never have a soda again.
Yeah.
And if I do, all is lost. I might as well stop.
Yeah. So, it was allowing me to be human. So once a week, my wife and I, we go out on Friday nights for date night. I watch what I eat all week long. That when it comes up to going out that night, there is no counting on anything. Everything is off the board. I mean, it's free. It's a free for all. And if I go crazy and I eat a 2,500, 2,000 calorie meal, so be it. It's not going to mean the end of my life. I'm not going to put on 100 pounds just because I ate a big meal and had some sweets. 3,500 calories is 1 pound. You know how much you got to eat to put on weight? And you got to do that consistently over time. It was tough for me to understand that concept. It was hard.
The difference was you didn't do it again the next day and the next day after that.
Exactly.
After that.
Exactly.
Lindsay, one of the things you
Go
said,
back to
sorry to jump over you there. One of the things you said there was previously was the planning and building those habits, right? And those of us in recovery, right? This is a recovery podcast. And I think that, I'm 11 years in recovery. John's got many more, and, Matt's in the same area as I am. But we do certain things to make sure that we stay in recovery, right? It's the same thing. We have these habits, right? And for me, certain habits, it's certain things I read, it's certain people I talk to, it's going to my meetings, it's doing this podcast, right? And those are our building blocks. And I don't want to do all of those things all the time either. And there's times where I don't feel like being part of that, but I do them. They're habitual to me today, and they protect me from losing my sobriety. And it's the same thing, like you said, doing that prep, because I love when I prep my meals. I love when like on a Sunday, when I know pretty much all week what I'm going to eat, right? I mean, it's just having that plan down for me is such it's a relief, actually, because I mean, my wife and I, a lot of times my wife and I don't eat the same food because she doesn't eat that way. So, I mean, and I'll say, she's like, "Well, what are you having?" Well, I'm having my fish. I cooked up a couple meals of my fish stuff, and I'm going to have that tonight. And it really is. And I think alcoholics, I think people in recovery can relate to this by thinking, okay, I do all this work for my recovery. If I want my health to get better too, I need to do that same type of work, that same type of planning, that same type of dedication that I put into my sobriety as I do my physical. So, I just sort of wanted to tie that in. Like, they're not separate. They're sort of the same. You got to put in some time and make sure that you put in that effort.
When you have, I'm sure for you guys, you have what are your non-negotiables? There's something you just do, right?
Right.
And then there's other things that you might do that sometimes you do them and they are helpful, and other times it's not as important. But your non-negotiables are like your foundation. And we have the same thing with our health and fitness. We have a foundation. Our sleep, our stress, and our water are our 3 non-negotiables. They are our foundation, and that's what we prioritize. Even when the life goes crazy, like John was talking about, you have a house remodel going on and a whole bunch of stuff happening, we can focus on sleep, stress, and water. Some of the other stuff might fall by the wayside, but we can pick that back up when life returns to normal. But having that solid foundation, that non-negotiable, those things are kind of a basis, a foundation, starting point.
Yeah, I like that.
Lindsay, how do you do rest? This is something that's top of my list, and I think this is a really great way to go out. I have somebody I've gotten to know who does a podcast and has talked about, I'm in bed at 9:30 and I have my lights out at 10:15 and I am up at 6:45 every single day, 7 days a week. And then she posted that she was off the habit, and it broke my heart because I'm like, no, you got me to that place. So I've gotten myself to a point now where, you know what, I'm just going to be in bed by this time and I'm going to put down the phone. But this is the part that's really hard for me. What do you recommend in terms of building that habit on the rest?
Yeah. Well, having a goal, we always recommend at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night. And for some people, that seems like a lot. And the quality of the sleep really matters too. 7 to 8 hours of sleep for one person can look completely different than for somebody else because they're awake half the night or they wake up and then they can't fall back to sleep. Two things we try to help people with when it comes to sleep. One is a nighttime routine. So having something that you do consistently that kind of sets you up for bed is really important. I have an alarm that goes off and it's my notification. It's time to get ready for bed because I know it's going to take me a certain amount of time to get everything done I want to get done before I crawl in bed. And that looks different for everybody, but for me, it's taking a couple supplements that really help me with sleep, that I know help me with sleep. And I set up my stuff for the next day. If I need to have some workout stuff out because I'm getting up and doing a workout in the morning, I get that stuff out. If it's out, I'm more likely to get up and do it. Anything that needs to happen before you hit the pillow, that needs to go off at a time that's going to allow you enough time to do it and get in bed so you can get those 7 to 8 hours. When it comes to sleep quality, a lot of that is related to your circadian rhythm. So we are supposed to have cortisol levels in our body rising up early in the morning, and that's energy. Like we wake up, we're supposed to be energized, ready to go, ready for our day, and then that slowly wears off throughout the day, and in the evening, melatonin is supposed to kick in. And that's what makes us tired, and that's what helps us sleep. When that cycle is off, and it can be off for a lot of different reasons, that's when we struggle to get good sleep at night. So doing things that help support a healthy circadian rhythm, not looking at screens an hour before bed, the light that comes from the screens is a signal to our body the same as the sunlight is. And it signals cortisol. And when cortisol is high, we're not going to sleep good. But then when we get up in the morning, it is important to get into bright light. It is important to get sunshine and to elevate those cortisol levels when they're supposed to be higher. Your stress level overall matters when it comes to your sleep cycles, the way that you put your food into your day, it's all tied in together. So, and creating those healthy habits that support good quality sleep and then creating a bedtime routine to set you up for the amount you need, those are kind of the things we really focus in on.
Awesome. You can find Lindsay Persico a bunch of different places. Check out her Instagram feed, which is very inspiring. You'll look at this and say, my God, she's grabbing these dumbbells that are like, I couldn't do it with two hands. She's just going at it here. She's at Hunt Fiber. You can also find her website, huntfiber.com. Lindsay, anything else we should plug for you?
You guys are Bristol Bay if you want.
Oh yeah. I work for Tana Grenda with Bristol Bay Fitness. We do the online personal training. It's coaching, it's lifestyle, it's fitness and nutrition all in one. But one thing I'd like to say is just anybody who's listening to this podcast, and you guys too, you all are inspirational. You're doing something that's not an easy thing to do, and you give other people hope. So keep it up.
Thank you for that.
That's part of the message is if you can do this, if you can get sober and you can improve your life, the stuff that you do in doing part of that, getting physically better, isn't as hard as that. You can do it. There are things you can do if you got sober. Lindsay, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being part of the show.
Thanks for having me.
If you like the show, go on Apple Podcast, leave a 5-star review. You can do that on Spotify now too. Share it with somebody you think might love the show. We'll see you next week. Happy New Year, everybody. You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod.